Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Tuesday. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos and fired up to be with you. Jamie Tutko, LSU Director of Player Personnel in charge of the pitching, stands right next to Jay Johnson for every pitch of every game. He'll join us at 1:15. That's 15 minutes from right now. Excited for that conversation. Excited to talk to our normal Tuesday guest. Glenn West going to speak with us at the end of hour number 2. Sharif Ishak doing the same thing. Both of those guys are actually covering things at the moment. Glenn is at Alec Box Stadium where Jay Johnson and a couple players will meet with the media in 15 minutes. Sharif is at Saints Mandatory Minicamp, which is up and running. The fans are out there on Airline right now. It's apparently a sold-out crowd for what maybe the worst team in the NFL. So passion never in short supply in the Big Easy for the New Orleans Saints. We'll talk to Sharif about that in the second hour. I didn't get a chance yesterday to kind of unpack the House settlement and how that's going to impact recruiting and college athletics. I want to talk about that at 1:30 and specifically how that relates to LSU. Grant Taylor is headed up to the major leagues. We'll talk about that in the first hour as well. And something that I didn't quite get to last week because we had a lot of baseball to talk about. There are some point spreads out for LSU football games this fall, and I'd like to discuss some of those as well. So that's a full menu on this Tuesday. Lock us in for the next 2 hours. We'll crank things up the way we do every single day with our Genesis Opening Drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Heck of a baseball game yesterday in Durham. Duke and Murray State, the last ticket to be punched to the College World Series in Omaha is either going to be Duke's first trip to Omaha or Murray State's first trip to Omaha. And the Racers, after having gone through the SEC host in the regional, go through the ACC host in the Super, and they are headed to Omaha. Murray State is an incredible story. I can't quite explain it, because you're talking about a team in Murray State that hit 279 as a team for the season in a bad league. And then they showed up in Oxford and scored 40 runs.
Sounds like another team we know.
Yeah. I mean, Little Rock was feisty. And you're talking about a Murray State team that bashed it all over the place in Swayze Field and then really swung the bat well the entirety of the Super Regional as well, and they did just enough to outscore Duke. I think the play that'll obviously garner the most attention is the play that ended the game last night, and if you were watching, you're familiar with it. If you were not, Murray State had a 1-run lead. Duke was hitting in the bottom of the 9th inning, and there was a ground ball in the infield with a runner on first base, and Murray State went to turn the double play. And the throw went to second, and the runner slid into second base. The second baseman making the turn hit the ground on the throw, and the throw to first was not in time. So there was going to be 2 outs and a runner on first base. Then they immediately called interference. Ball game's over. Murray State dog piles, and they're going to Omaha. They said, all right, we're going to review it. And they showed the review. And I'll be very honest with you about the review. And I tweeted this in real time, and this is how my emotions felt watching it. It looked like a clean slide to me on the replay. However, undeniably, the slider's left foot missed second base by about 1.5 feet and contacted the Murray State second baseman that was turning the double play. Now, his knee slid right into the middle of the base, but his foot obviously missed the bag and hit the middle infielder turning it. Now, I know that the rule states you've got to slide into the middle of the bag. I don't know if that means your lead foot needs to hit the middle of the bag or it's okay if your knee on your other leg hits the bag. Either way, that's semantics. If they would have said runners out for interference, like, I would have bought that because his foot was clearly inside the baseline. But like I said, it looked like a clean slide to me. He very clearly contacted the base. He didn't slide through the base. I didn't think the slide was overly late. Like, I could have understood it either way. But they did rule that it was not interference. So Murray State, after dogpiling, had to go back out and get another out. And to their credit, they did. Ground ball to first base, easy play, and kind of a half-hearted dogpile on the second try. Completes the field of 8 in Omaha. And I wrote a little column on LouisianaSports.net. If you haven't seen it, it's very easy reading. It's not in-depth at all. This is early in the week stuff, just to kind of get a sense of what everybody that's going up there is playing for. And it's interesting to me, and I mentioned this yesterday on the show, but I find this field to be fascinating. This is not like the field that LSU played in 2 years ago. That field had just superstars all over the place. Paul Skeens started the All-Star game. He was out there. Dylan Cruz, second pick in the draft. He was out there already in the big leagues. Wyatt Lakeford was up in the big leagues in like 5 minutes for the Rangers for Florida. He was on that team. Jack Caglione just got called up for the Royals. He torched AAA. He was on that Florida team. Wake Forest was loaded. Nick Kurtz was on that team. He's in the big leagues already. You had Rhett Lauder on that team. He's in the big leagues already for Cincinnati. Like, it was a who's who. And it was awesome. There's a part of me that really likes that too. Do I love playing Florida for the national championship? Not really, but that doesn't really have anything to do with Florida. I just don't like when it turns into Hoover North. But the Wake Forest stuff was incredible. And I think LSU playing Oregon State in 2017 was incredible. And I think the diversity of this field is interesting because it's not just a bunch of blue blood SEC teams with future top 25 picks on them. Like, there's a time and place for that. But there are some interesting storylines for me with this field, and I'll kind of run through them briefly. What was the Pac-12 has 3 teams in. Now, they're all in very different situations. Oregon State, I told y'all this the day that announcement was made that those schools were going to the Big Ten, and then the schools that left to go to the Big 12 went to the Big 12, and the schools that left to go to the ACC went to the ACC. But I told you this, like, I can't fake passion for Oregon State and Washington State athletics. I have none. But I can be sympathetic to their situation if you're a fan of those programs and you're like, man, our entire competitive hemisphere just collapsed. Now we got to go play in the Mountain West against who? San Diego State? Wow, that's gross. But their baseball team persevered. And they've still got star power. Dax Whitney was as big a recruit as anybody signed this past year. He's a right-hander that throws 98 miles an hour. Like, Gavin Turley's still there. He's their all-time leader in home runs. You're looking at a guy in Ari Arquette that's probably going to be a top 15 pick. Like, they've got dudes at Oregon State, and they're trying to win with a second coach. Not all Pat Casey. This is now his protege who's got this team in Omaha for the first time since 2019. And we'll see what they can do. Now, John Savage at UCLA was as good a coach as there was in college baseball around 2010 and 2013 when they won it. But things have cooled off a ton for UCLA. They hadn't been back to Omaha since they won it in 2013. But this team, UCLA, has only lost 2 series all year, and they held UTSA to 2 runs total in 18 innings over the weekend in the Super Regional. So very cool story for UCLA. I think that college baseball is better if UCLA kind of shows up. I don't know how good they are, but they've played pretty solidly all year long. Now, Arizona has been to Omaha twice in the last decade, and they won a national championship right when the College World Series moved to Omaha, to Charles Schwab, which was TD Ameritrade at that point. But Jay Johnson's not there anymore. So now you've got Arizona, who was right there on the doorstep in 2016. They're back, but the guy that led them there is across the bracket, and the team they lost to is the team they play in the opener. I think that's very, very fascinating. And speaking of Coastal Carolina, I think whenever I mention Coastal Carolina now as a Cinderella, you kind of group them in with Fresno State as the crazy long shot winners of the College World Series, right? But they don't really fit that mold. Like, Fresno State was a one-hit wonder that got hot and won the national championship. Crazy. Coastal is always in the tournament, and you're talking about a team that has won 4 regionals in the last 17 years. They've got a more recent national championship than everybody in this field except LSU and Oregon State. So while I would still consider them a low resource program when you compare them to Arkansas or LSU, and certainly they haven't achieved at the level of Oregon State, but you consider what that program is right now, like to dismiss them and to group them in with Fresno State, like I probably have over the years a lot, is probably not the right way to go. This is not Stony Brook. This is a real program. They've won 53 games this year. They swept number 4 national seed Auburn. They've won 23 games in a row. Like, yes, playing in that league contributes to the fact that you've won that many games in a row and that many games overall. But when you stack that many years of good play together, like, I think Coastal's a threat to win the whole thing. And that's not something I was prepared to say in January. So you want a Cinderella, that's Murray State. And I'll give you some nuggets on Murray State that I dug out that I found fascinating. I mentioned that they only hit 279 as a team, and now they're bashing the ball all over the place. But if you dig even further, Johnny Reagan Field is where they play their home games. It was built in 1987. They did not install lights until 2014 for Murray State baseball. They did not have a grandstand until 2014. Now they have one, and it seats 800 people. So I went, well, what do they usually draw? And keep in mind, I know what the weather's like in Kentucky in February, okay? But that was kind of the point of the exercise. I went to their box score. On opening day, they played at home. They drew 180 fans. 180 fans were there for opening day. There will be far more employees at Charles Schwab Field for their opener on Saturday than 180 fans that were there to watch them play in the opener. Their coach, Dan Skirka, still mows the field, apparently. Like, that's what we're talking about here with Murray State. That is a Cinderella. And that's a team that I don't expect to be a threat in Omaha, but it is truly a Cinderella. Then you've got Louisville. And Louisville was great between 2013 and 2019. They went to Omaha 4 times, but they went 3-8. Dan McDonald's been there for 19 years. He's coached 41 All-Americans, 105 Major League draft picks. Like, they've had a good go, no titles. And you would look at that and go, well, that's got to be like as successful a coach as there is that's had not enough success in Omaha. And I would go, well, Dave Van Horn will raise you there. Dave Van Horn is the modern day Mike Martin. Dave Van Horn has had his team in Omaha 8 times. Dave Van Horn has been 1 out away from a national championship. And they dropped the pop-up and then gave up an RBI single and then a 2-run homer from Oregon State beat him. Arkansas was so deflated by that drop pop-up and that tying single and that go-ahead single, home run, as it were, that they didn't even score the next day in Game 3, and Oregon State wins the title. So I think that everybody is playing for a little bit something different, and I think it makes it very fascinating. And because I don't think there's a juggernaut, and I would include LSU and Arkansas in that. I think they're both very, very good. But I like LSU's team from 2 years ago better than both of these teams. I like Wake Forest team from 2 years ago better than these two teams. I like Tennessee and A&M at full strength last year with Braden Montgomery probably better than these two teams. But they're the best teams left, and then they're on one side of the bracket, and one of them's losing on Saturday. So it just feels as wide open as you could possibly have it. I don't expect Murray State to win it. I don't love Louisville's chances either, and they're on other sides of the bracket. But other than that, like, I can kind of see a path for just about everybody. So I'm excited to get up there. I'm excited to watch, and I think it's going to be fascinating, if not star-studded, fascinating up there in Omaha. One guy that will be in Omaha is Jamie Tutko. He's Jay Johnson's right-hand man, director of player development on the pitching side. He will join us next on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Genesis offers a luxury experience at a reasonable price. That's the model. So when I tell you about the luxury brand of vehicles at Genesis, and I tell you about all the perks about being a Genesis driver, don't just immediately think a luxury. I can't afford that. Go to GenesisofBatonRouge.com and just see. I think you'll be surprised. You won't know until you try. Get on by and see them, airline at Piku, chat with one of their brand ambassadors. They won't push you. They're not going to upsell you, not going to take advantage of you. They're going to treat you like a guest. And I think you'll be so impressed with the experience and the pricing that you'll decide, hey, let's get behind the wheel. And if you'd like to get behind the wheel, you don't have to go there to do it. They'll come to you. Valet test drives, always available at Genesis of Baton Rouge. They'll come to your place of business. They'll come to your home. And they'll get you in that ride. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Find that entire inventory online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. That's genesisofbatonrouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Tuesday edition of The Hunt Palmer Show here in studio. Second hour, we'll have Sharif Ishak from Saints Camp. We'll also have Glenn West from Go 24/7. He's currently at the box right now. Player interviews, Jay Johnson meeting with the media as well. For those that are headed up to Omaha, I will be there starting Friday for my show. We'll be at the Ameristar in Council Bluffs, just across the river from Omaha. It's literally like Port Allen or Bruley to Baton Rouge, right there across the river. So I'll be at the Ameristar as long as LSU is there, and we certainly hope it is a long time. Jamie Tutko will be there for all of it, right next to Jay Johnson in that dugout. He's Director of Player Personnel in charge of pissing, and gives us a little bit of time here on this Tuesday. Last time we spoke was opening day. Lots transpired, but you're right where you want to be, Coach. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm glad to be here.
Let's talk about the last 2 weeks for your team. Obviously, a little bit jarring last Sunday with the 4-seed Little Rock just really playing a great game. What can you tell us about the attitude of the team that Monday and their response in that game, even falling behind in the regional final?
Yeah, no, these guys have they responded unbelievably well. It's a lot of older guys obviously on our team. They've really, answered the bell. After that tough Sunday loss last weekend, we came in on Monday and never would have felt like, okay, if we lose, we're done. It was just, we just went back to work and kept grinding. And, they're playing with a lot of confidence right now. And it's a lot of fun to watch these guys go.
I want to ask you about a moment in the game on Sunday, the second game of the Super Regional. I know you were standing there, and I don't know if you were part of the conversation. This was just me from the press box watching. But when Stanfield punched that ball into right field, that's about as animated as I've seen Jay Johnson. He was out 15 feet out of the dugout, pumping his fist and pointing away at Stanfield. What created that reaction, do you think?
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that because I said the exact same thing to somebody yesterday. That's the most animated I've seen him in a long time. There was a lot that went into it. I think the obvious is, there was a bases loaded situation with, Bassinger coming into the ball game, who's tough on right-handers. And, we had a couple of left-handers on the bench that were, ready to go. And I think it was kind of like that decision of, do we go with the left-hander here? Do we stick with Stanfield? And then ultimately, Coach Johnson, decided to stick with Chris, and Chris has been really good against right-handed arms all year, and he's been our guy. And, obviously, he gets down 0-1. The guy throws a really good right-on-right changeup, and it's a 0-1 count. And in those type of situations, you don't ever really want to get you don't want to let the at-bat get deeper and deeper. You don't want to kind of go after the first one that you can get. And he got a fastball up, and he just stayed on it and did exactly what we asked him to do. And, it was just that moment of just joy for Chris, because, he's such a great kid. He's grinded. He's been such a big part of why we are where we are right now. And to see him come up with that big hit against a tough right-hander was awesome, and just so fired up for Chris for that moment.
Let's talk a little bit of pitching. I know that's your corner of the store. Shores has been so good late in the season, was not at his best in the regional, but man, was that impressive on Sunday night. What's his journey been like this year, and how much confidence do y'all have in him as y'all fly to Nebraska?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously been a lot of up and downs. It's probably, when it's all said and done, might not be exactly what Chase, had drawn up for himself for the year, but holy cow, like you're right. I mean, he came out of the bullpen the other day, and it was 99 to 102 with a 90-mile-an-hour slider, and he was throwing strikes. He was getting ahead of guys. Nobody is going to hit that. Nobody in college baseball, guys in the big leagues are not going to hit that with that type of stuff. So, the confidence that we have in him is through the roof. It has never wavered. He's in this new role, obviously now out of the bullpen, and he's really adjusted to that really, really well, and really, really excited for Chase. And he was on that team obviously in 23 that got a chance to obviously went to Omaha and win the whole thing, and he didn't get a chance to pitch. And I know that he was itching to pitch the last time we were there. So after the game when he when we're all celebrating on the field, I just went up to him and gave him a hug and told him how fired up I was that, he finally gets to pitch in Omaha, and because he deserves it. It's been a long road, but he's a great, great kid and works his tail off. And, he's going to pitch for a long, long time.
Cooper Williams is not a guy that I would have pegged as a key bullpen arm as of 6 weeks ago. Would y'all have? And then what do you think of his development to this point?
Yes, actually, I think that it's one of those that in-house, the performance that he had the other night surprised nobody in the dugout. I mean, that is exactly what we knew that he could do, what we've seen from him. It's just phenomenal for an 18-year-old kid to go out there and do that in that situation and not even let any bit of the moment get to him and just, one pitch at a time, just literally going right after guys, strike one, strike two. I mean, it was awesome. And then he had a couple of long innings too, where he had to sit down and to go back out there and continue to just dominate by flooding the strike zone with multiple pitches. Again, it doesn't surprise anybody in the dugout, and couldn't be more fired up for him. I'm really excited, obviously, for the rest of this year. But I see this kid, really, really pushing at a chance to be in the rotation next year and being a mainstay on our pitching staff for the next couple of years. It's just so fired up for Cooper. He's got a really, really bright future.
Jamie Tutko is our guest, LSU's Director of Player Personnel in charge of pitching. All right, let's talk about the two guys at the top of the rotation. I want to talk about Cade first. I was in the post-game press conference after a super regional win on Saturday, and I can only describe Cade's mood as sour. He was not a smiley dude after that press conference. He had given up a season high for him, 6 earned runs, even though it was a winning effort. How has he responded, and what have you seen from him in his sophomore season?
Man, Cade Anderson is an absolute dream. He's so much fun to coach. He checks all of the boxes from the makeup standpoint, the work ethic standpoint. Like there's nothing that this guy doesn't do that we're not just extremely excited about and happy about the way he presents himself. And yeah, he was frustrated. I mean, like you said, gave up 6 runs in 7 innings. But I think that the biggest thing that we emphasized to him after the game was it was 110 degrees, right? Yep. It was really, really hot on the field. He had a lot of long innings where he was sitting down. The fact that he went out there and was able to give us 21 outs in those conditions, regardless of how many runs he gave up, and to kind of, for lack of a better term, save our bullpen and not have to use them and be full go on Sunday was unbelievable. And it's just something that, that doesn't show up in a stat sheet. But, the fact that he was able to do, there's not a lot of people in the country that would have been able to do that given, the situation. And it was his 10th win. I know that he's not a guy that is a me guy whatsoever. He doesn't look at his statistics or anything. But, anytime you can get 10 wins, I look at 10 wins as like 20 wins in the big leagues. Anytime you can get 10 wins in college, that's really, really cool, and that's really awesome. And I think that's something that, you can. It's okay to be a little selfish at times and be happy for yourself to get 10 wins. That's really, really cool feat.
Another guy that's got 10 wins is Anthony Ianson. His routine's been a little bit different the last 3 weeks. Hoover, the regional pitching twice, and then this past week. So what's that been like for him, and how is this week approaching Omaha?
Yeah, he's fired up. He wants the ball in any situation. He literally does not care when he gets it, whether it's to start, whether it's to finish. He wants the ball. He wants to compete. He wants to go out there and just dominate and help his team win in any way that he possibly can. And it's so much. It's easier for us to say that we want our guys to do that, but with him, like we actually mean that. Like he really just wants to do anything that he possibly can to help this team win. And if that means throwing the 8th and 9th inning of a close ball game, or it means starting and throwing 5-6 innings, whatever it's going to be, he's going to get the ball whenever we ask him to, and he's just going to go. And it's another guy that has been a dream to coach. You can't say enough good things about the kid, and he's another one that is a special, very special kid. The makeup, the work ethic, the ability. He's gonna pitch for a very, very long time.
Arkansas is first up. You obviously saw him a few weeks ago. Does that make it a little bit easier to prepare, or is it a completely different team than it was a month and a half ago?
I mean, it makes it, a little bit easier to prepare just because, we have that fresh memory of these guys. But, the way that we go about it as a staff is we go into it like it's a brand new opponent that we haven't faced. Yes, we'll have our notes. Yes, we have all of our stuff that we had from just a month ago. But we're going to, approach this as a brand new team just so that, we're looking at things in a different lens. And it's obviously it's a different ballpark, right? So that ballpark is different than here. And, so we're going to treat things probably a little bit different there. But yeah, I think just the comfortability does make it maybe a tad easier. But, we're really excited. They obviously had a really good year. Last two teams in the SEC still standing. And, we're really excited about the matchup on Saturday night.
I'm not asking you to tip your hand here, but is pitching and a game plan different in Charles Schwab as opposed to Alec Box in June, which is where y'all have been the last couple of weeks? Does that change the way that you coach your pitchers?
Somewhat, but yes and no. It doesn't change the big, our big emphasis, right? We're still, we want to get ahead. We want to suffocate the strike zone. We want to throw multiple pitches for strikes. We want to dominate first pitch strikes, and we want to throw 2 out of the first 3 in the zone. So it doesn't change any of that. But I would be sitting here lying to you if we didn't, know that it was a bigger ballpark. Yeah. But again, I will say this: being there in 23, it depends on the wind. If the wind is blowing in like it was for most of the tournament in 23, it's hard to hit the ball out. But on Sunday, the game that we all like to forget, where we gave up a couple touchdowns, the wind was blowing straight out. So, that ballpark that day played like Tennessee's ballpark. It really did. It was small and the ball jumped. So, it kind of depends on the weather, on the wind. So, we're going to treat it just like we normally do. And again, we're going to dominate the things that we want to dominate, and that's first pitch strikes and 2 out of the first 3.
Congratulations on a great run so far. Y'all travel safe, and we'll see you up in Omaha, Jamie.
All right. Thanks, Hunt.
Jamie Tutko, LSU's Director of Player Personnel, pitching. Really appreciate a little bit of time. Jamie's been good enough to come out and see us the last 2 years when we've been out at the box for opening day. They're obviously pretty close to playing at that time, literally. Like we're on at noon in those 2 games. And he came out at 12:15 and chatted with us before their, I think, 1 o'clock first pitch. 2 o'clock first pitch. But now got a little bit more time. I know that Jay Johnson and the players are chatting right now with the media. So if anything of note comes from that, I'm quite confident we will not be getting a starting pitcher for Saturday from that. But if anything of note comes from that, we'll certainly chat with Glenn West about it in about an hour from right now. But appreciate Jamie for a little bit of time. We'll step aside, come back. What do we got coming up next? I forgot even what we were. Oh, yeah. I wanted to do this yesterday. I didn't have time. We had too much baseball to get to. The House settlement's been approved. It's a new era of college athletics. How does that affect LSU, specifically in football, basketball, and baseball? We'll talk about that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Chugging along here on Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. If you missed this late in the evening on Friday, the House settlement that deals with NCAA athletics was passed. And that means that it's a new world in college sports when it comes to name, image, and likeness. Essentially, the nuts and bolts of this, and I think a lot of you are familiar with this at this point, but now schools, for the first time ever, are cleared to share revenue with student athletes. And the ruling indicates that the schools can spend a maximum, it's optional, a maximum of just north of $20 million with their student athletes this coming year. And that number is expected to rise annually as revenues rise. It's a percentage. And so that number will go from 20 million, probably just north of 25 million over the course of the next 4 or 5 years. That's a projection. But that's That's where things stand. Every NIL deal that a student athlete signs that's worth more than $600 has to be reviewed by a clearinghouse that will determine whether or not that is the market value. If they say that's fine, you sign for $100,000 for this or that, then you're good. Collect the money. If they look at a $100,000 deal and go, well, there's only $20,000 worth of value here, you can appeal that once with new information and say, here's why it's worth $100,000, or you can take the 20. But the clearinghouse, which is run by Deloitte, apparently is going to be able to turn these rulings around very, very quickly, like within a matter of a couple of days. Now, I probably trust Deloitte to follow through on that far more than I would trust the NCAA, which can't decide if an athlete is eligible to play sports for months at a time. But I'm still skeptical of that because of how many deals are going to be coming through the turnstiles. They've got this Go NIL portal thing that they can pump the deals into that can determine whether or not it's fair. And we'll see as the practice begins. But the thought here is that, okay, we've got players that are making significant money from the schools, and that's capped like an NFL team salary cap. And then you are free to go sign endorsement deals based on your social media standing or celebrity in the town that you're in for a business if the market indicates that that is adequate. No problem with Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman Trophy, walking across the stage with a big bucket of canes and getting a ton of money for it. You win the Heisman Trophy, you put chicken fingers out there and it's on social media, that's worth a lot of money. All good. They're good with that. Now, you go to a high school kid and say, hey, here's $700,000. Just need you to sign a napkin. Deloitte's going to look at that and go, no, that's for recruiting. That has nothing to do with his name, image, and likeness. He doesn't create that kind of marketplace value. This is not going to stand. And so that would appear to kind of settle the wild, wild west to an extent. I'm not sure that Oracle can pay Bryce Underwood what they did at that point in his high school journey in this future world. But that remains to be seen. Now, how does this affect LSU? Twofold, two things with LSU for me. One, the schools get to determine how they allocate this $20 million. And as Ross Dellinger writes on Yahoo Sports, the indication for most schools is that 90+% of that $20 million will be distributed amongst the football and basketball programs, men's basketball programs. And then, based on what each program in your athletic department, where their standing is nationally and in the community, like, you'll allocate those funds XYZ. What I do know from some conversations with people at LSU is that because this has been so long in the making and we've known what this number was for months and months and months, there have already been very sincere conversations over at LSU about how to divvy up this $20 million. And certainly the first program to bang its gavel on the table is going to be the football program. They create the most money. They've got the most players. They've got the most competitive NIL landscape. They've got the most famous players. Like, they're going to take a sizable chunk. But here at LSU, like, women's basketball is going to get some money. Yeah, I promise you, Kim Mulkey is not going to sit in the background and go, yeah, Brian Kelly, take what you need. Yeah, I know Jay Johnson, y'all are in Omaha. My son played there. Y'all can have some of that. No, Matt, I know you need some players on the men's side, so y'all go handle that. If there's any left over for me, like, I'll take a few bucks. Like, that ain't going to be how Kim Mulkey handles this. She's going to go and say this is a national championship program. I'm a Hall of Fame coach. We've got a big standing on this campus. We sell out the arena for our postseason games. Like, we're getting some money. And Jay Johnson in the baseball program, they're going to command more of that pie than, let's say, the head coach, Paul Maneri at South Carolina, than Butch Thompson at Auburn. I know they were the number 4 national seed still. Like, LSU is going to command more of that on the baseball side. And I believe, this is a guess. I believe men's basketball at LSU will probably get less than a lot of the schools in the SEC. That's a guess, but that is my guess. So you have to, as an athletic department, determine how you're going to allocate those funds. And I think at LSU, football's going to get a ton. They're going to compete with the top of the top. And I do think there's going to be a tougher wrestling match for those funds on the back end after football from the higher profile national championship caliber programs on this campus. And baseball is one of those, and women's basketball is one of those, and men's basketball knows how this game now has to be played, and they did spend some money that was before all this on players, and they're going to try to get their hat in the ring and see what they can get. But it's going to be competitive for that here at LSU. Now, the second piece to this is, how does LSU compete with this on a national level? How does it impact LSU's football team's chances of competing for championships and getting players and keeping them? And I believe this is a positive for LSU. No one is going to compete with Oracle, like for Bryce Underwood. Like, that is a unicorn of a situation. But there are 4 and 5 stars in the high school ranks and the transfer portal ranks every year. And when you just let anybody spend any amount on anybody, LSU is going to have a hard time against Texas. Going to have a hard time against Ohio State. That's just the reality. Like, LSU's got money, and clearly they signed the number 1 portal class. But as far as sustaining that over 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 years, like, LSU's going to struggle to keep up with that. But if you rein it in a little bit, and I'm not ruling out under-the-table deals with this now. That's the way things went for decades and decades and decades, and I'm not naive to that. But LSU is going to generate a lot of money. They're going to keep up with the revenue share part of it. And I do believe that there are business people in Baton Rouge who will continue to ante up for fair market NIL deals that go through this clearinghouse. And so maybe the days of the $1.8 million per year NIL deal that is just pay for play are in the rearview mirror, because I don't believe that market value exists for your starting safety. I don't believe that market exists for your wide receiver. Maybe it does, but I'm not an expert on what amount of social media following warrants what amount of money. But I think LSU will compete, certainly will keep up on the revenue share. And then I think that there are enough business people in this state that are willing to work with LSU student athletes to do what is fair. And that's essentially what you've got to do now moving forward. It's not just cut the biggest check you can cut. Now, does LSU struggle to create as big a spotlight as USC in Hollywood? Maybe. But I think that this is a positive for LSU to try to keep things between the rails. LSU's not broke by any stretch of the imagination. But there are some folks in a cut as big a check as you want world that LSU would struggle to keep up with year over year. And maybe some of that's reined in now by this. Again, I'm not naive enough to know it's all going away. Like, you're not going to take away the under the table stuff, but it'll be lessened, I think. And it'll certainly be lessened on the NIL front if deals have to be cleared through a clearinghouse. So I think it's a good thing. As I've always said, I'm positive. I'm pro student athletes earning money based on their name, image, and likeness. I don't know that I'm pro Nico Iamaleava going to the coach's office, demand more cash from the booster base or you're leaving. Like, that's not my favorite thing in the world. But if we can put some regulations on this and then let the student athletes be compensated a little bit for some of the great things they do, I think that's the happy medium. And this, while nothing's perfect, and there will always be people that try to circumvent the rules, I feel like this is a positive thing for the structure of collegiate athletics. That's what I think of it. There's one guy that doesn't have to worry about NIL deals in college because he's headed to the major leagues. We'll talk about that coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
for a former Tiger yesterday. Grant Taylor got the call up to the major leagues. He'll be joining the Chicago White Sox in Houston for their series this week. And Grant's time in Baton Rouge was cut a little bit short as a draft-eligible sophomore. Really closed his freshman year in 2022, Jay Johnson's first year. Really strong as a key piece out of that bullpen for a team that was just begging for anybody to come help Paul Gervais and Eric Reiselman out of the bullpen. And Taylor did an awesome job. Unfortunately, tore the UCL entering the 2023 season and missed that entire year. But still, based on the potential and what he showed as a freshman, was a second-round selection of the White Sox, got a nice signing bonus, and started his professional career, and it's been a great run for him. He started in Double-A as a starting pitcher. They moved him to the bullpen, and he was just absolutely lights out in Double-A. He was so good in Double-A in Birmingham for the Barons that they called him up from Double-A. He didn't even make it Triple-A. They just said, "You're coming," which is a fantastic thing for Grant. And this is the what if game is a dangerous one, I know, but we can play it here briefly. And keep in mind, I understand that every team across the country's always got injuries, but you think about how good that 2023 LSU team was, how great the offense was, how dominant Skeens was, and what Floyd became at the end in Omaha. And you consider that team was playing without Grant Taylor, a big leaguer who was a second-round pick, without Chase Shores, who's going to be a big leaguer, and you've seen the potential. I mean, you saw what he did in the game on Sunday, and without Garrett Edwards, who was probably your best reliever for the first 8 weeks of that season, and he went down. Like, if you add those guys to this team, and you have a starting rotation of Skeens, Floyd, and Grant Taylor, like, that would have been unbelievable to watch this LSU team. That would have had Edwards in the bullpen, Shores in the bullpen. And I like to play this game, even though this one is a little, I'm reaching too far, but I just humor me. Jacob Mizorowski was a signee in that class out of junior college. And Jacob Mizorowski signed with the Brewers. He was an early pick. I think he went in the first round. And he was never going to come to LSU, so this is not something that was like really, really close. But he was in the class. Humor me. He got called up today by the Brewers, and he throws 100, and he threw 98 in JUCO. So just allow me for a second to consider a weekend rotation that includes number 1 overall pick Paul Skeens, compensation pick Ty Floyd, second rounder Grant Taylor, as well as first rounder and big leaguer Jacob Mizorowski. That would have been pretty good. I think that team could have won some games. Now, they didn't need to win any more games. They won as many games as they needed to win. They got to the national final, and they won it without Skeens pitching at all. But that's the kind of talent that LSU can attract, and it's such an amazing what if to look at that pitching staff. As great as Nate Ackenhausen and Riley Cooper were, like, I don't think those guys are going to pitch in the big leagues anytime soon. They could, but I don't think they are. To have that kind of talent that you actually won without is amazing, and another testament to just how good, one, Skeens was, and two, that team as a whole, especially offensively, was. Like, it was a lot of talent that was missing from that team by the time they got to the end of the season. And incredible news for Grant Taylor to get called up. I think he's got a real chance to be a dominant bullpen arm. He's got a fastball that's up to 99, 100 miles an hour, and the breaking ball is devastating. A big 12-6 bender that nobody in Double A was hitting. So we'll see. That's not a great team, the White Sox, that he's being called up to. So not a lot of pressure to perform in terms of a pennant race, but certainly pressure to perform to keep your job, stay there, and we certainly hope Grant Taylor does. I'm not a big White Sox fan. I think y'all are well aware of that, but I'm a big Grant Taylor fan, and I wish the best for him. I don't have to worry about the White Sox doing anything significant this year, so certainly want Grant Taylor to do an awesome job, and we'll let you know when he makes his debut and what that looks like over the course of the next few days, maybe as quickly as today. Over there in Houston. That's it for hour number 1 here on a Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We got a lot to do in hour number 2. Sharif Ishak over at Saints Mandatory Minicamp. Glenn West talking with the LSU baseball players and coaching staff right now at the box. So we'll hear from those two guys. We got some LSU football to talk about. Point spreads are out for this coming fall. I've got a couple thoughts on a couple of those games. We'll do that when we come back on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Look, closet space may not be something that you personally consider. Maybe it is. It wasn't for me until my wife moved into the house and she looked at our closet and said, this is not acceptable. And so we could have called David Duvall and One Bath and Closets, but we knew that we were about to move. And that's a whole ordeal. You don't want to move. You can deal with your closet situation under the current roof that you reside. Just start that process with David Duvall with that consultation. Starts with a questionnaire, and you tell him what you got and what you're looking for. And he can customize a closet to your exact specifications. It's going to look great. It's going to function beautifully. It'll be brand new. And there's financing options available, 0% up to 18 months, same as cash. Go to the website, onebathandclosets.com. Get that free consultation. You can see pictures of their fantastic work as well. It's David Duvall and One Bath and Closets. You can find them online at onebathandclosets.com.